of the sky shines brightly above us, like heaven itself in a moment of glory. Watching the sun rising before me, what a wonderful gift, the King Most High. All that we see and all that we are is the love the Father has shown us. Let us worship the King who created all things and glorify our Maker. Let us praise Him the more, for our hearts cannot hold Him. The greater is He than all of His works. Lift up your voice.
Being called to religious life wasn't something I always envisioned for myself. Not sure about you on that, but for me it was something that came up later on after college.
So with me, in terms of religious life, it came very suddenly, or unexpectedly, rather, because, I remember when I was 6, I really decided that I was going to get married when I became an adult and have kids and live the typical American life. And so the whole religious life, or even considering it, didn't even happen until 2005, for real. There was like a conversion moment. A priest made this passing comment about what a great nun I would be. And, that statement kind of haunted me ever since.
And so when I started to think about the religious life vocation more, I was like, oh, Lord, I see how you've been planting seeds and molding me and designing me, and how this vocation really does fit in with things I had thought about or desires I had. So then in 2011, under the guidance of some spiritual direction and speaking to some priests and prayer, it seems that it was the time to take a serious step forward and actually pursuing this vocation instead of just thinking about it, to being like, all right, Lord, you're in charge. You've been faithful. You'll continue to be faithful. So I'm giving you all the concerns or distractions I had, and I gave it to Him, and He has been faithful since then. So as He is all the time, but that personal experience of Him showing it and being able to recognize through this vocational journey how faithful His love is and His promises. So that's how I chose this vocation.
Well, I studied aerospace engineering in college, and so I thought I was going to be an astronaut. That's what brought me to Florida originally, and so I was just kind of on this track, become an engineer, work for NASA, be an astronaut, have fun, this kind of thing. And I think, I got midway through college and I just started to kind of question for the first time this sort of plan that I had for my life, and realizing maybe there was something else, that was meant for my life, and starting to ask for the first time, as I went through a bit of a conversion in college, asking God for the first time what He wants of me and what He wants from my life, and just considering, why He created me and what He has in mind. And so that kind of took me interiorly, on a different course.
I sort of first discovered the seed of the religious vocation whenever I was at like a youth conference, and they said, come up to the stage so we can pray over you if you feel called to a religious vocation. And I didn't realize, but somehow I became aware of this desire somehow to become a religious sister. But then from then on, it was just sort of like, it was present, but I was neither like pursuing it or rejecting it. So it was just like either way, really. And then something I think is like good for me to remember, I thought that So like during this time, I would talk to, for example, like a youth minister or my friends, or maybe sometimes my family too, but it seemed like our discussion never really like brought any fruit. And I think that was because I wasn't talking to the Lord, like because I didn't have a prayer life. So, but then once I began a prayer life in college, freshman year, that was when it just like, I feel like God was transforming me. It's sort of like, at first it was a one-way conversation, like me just talking to him. And then the following summer, I felt like I learned how to just like, it was becoming a two-way conversation, like him speaking, me listening, back and forth.
And the question of which community to enter, for me, thankfully, was an easy one. There was no question. I know this is an issue maybe other women struggle with, which community. For me, it was just obvious. I met Mother Olga back when she was Sister Olga over at Boston University. And I saw how she loved people who were religious, people who were secular, people she knew very well, people she hardly knew. You walk from the Catholic Center to Marsh Chapel with Mother, and she would get stopped all along the way by all kinds of people. And just seeing how she was and how she was present to them, I thought, if I'm going to be a sister, I want to be like her. As many holy sisters as there are, for some reason, she just really spoke to me in a different way.
She has such a presence to her, even then, that I reached out to her, I started talking to her, and that's how I started discerning with her community more seriously.
So it's been about 2 years, I'd say, that I've been living in this community, about 1.5 years for full-time formation, moving in and quitting the job and everything. So I would say it's been 2 years of a lot of growth and discovery about God. And when I look back on it, it's a lot of discovery about myself. But I would say in doing that, it's taught me a lot about humanity in general and just people in general. Learning more about myself has helped me, I think, to understand everybody a little bit more, that we all come from different backgrounds, but we're all on the same journey, the same struggles, the same, difficulties. They vary in how we experience them, or our different life situations of like growing up in different cultures, or our families vary, but really, the human journey for all of us is very similar in terms of growing and learning, and yes, falling, but also experiencing God's mercy and always remembering that.
So I started to visit communities that summer, and I found out that I was being moved to Boston, to the Boston University campus, and that this sister that I had seen on the Theology of the Body retreat had been working at Boston University, and that she was leaving the campus. I didn't know why she was leaving, but I was excited to be working with the students that she had been working with, because I just sensed that they would have like a beautiful foundation from having spent time with her. So I came to Boston and continued to discern, and then I found out the reason why she was leaving, that she was going to be beginning a new religious community in Boston. So I made the decision with my spiritual director to go ahead and contact her and to go on a discernment retreat with her and some other women. And Sister, you were there. Actually, you were there too, yes. We were all there together. And I just remember the first night of that retreat, we had Mass, and my mind was filled with all sorts of things, and I was a bit distracted and just really desiring to kind of settle into the retreat and be able to just kind of listen to whatever the Lord wanted to speak to me. And it's kind of funny, I had this scene from a movie come into my mind, and normally I would just think, oh, it's a distraction, just kind of ignore it. But for some reason, I just kind of paid attention to it for a minute and thought, well, Lord, are you trying to say something to me? And it was a scene from the movie Aladdin, Disney movie, and there's this moment in the movie towards the beginning where there's a lot of commotion going on, and Aladdin is like running through the streets, and he's being chased, and he's in this upper room, and the Jasmine, the female character in the movie, the only way for them to kind of escape from these men that were chasing them was to jump out this window. So the scene that came to my mind was him standing in the windowsill, and he's like reaching his hand out and saying to her, "Do you trust me?" then jump, And she was kind of like, yes, I think so. And then they jumped out the window, and, we know the end of the story. And so I realized like that really was the Lord, trying to speak to me in that moment to just ask me that same question. Do you trust me? Then if you do, jump. And really what unfolded for me on that discernment retreat was, again, the furthering of the invitation from the Lord, but really it came this time more in the form of like an invitation to an adventure, to just kind of go on this exciting journey with him and see where he was going to take me and where we were going to go. And that's what it's been, a beautiful adventure with him. And I haven't looked back, from that moment of taking the leap. So.
The church today is a little different. And so if you're going to start a new community, perhaps it's good to have a community whose view is a bit broader in what they do. So I'm excited to see where this community goes and what direction it takes, because I like all the endless possibilities where the Spirit may bring us to fill the needs that come up as they come up.
I was born in a relatively large family, 7 children. I'm exactly the middle child, 3 older than me and 3 younger than me. 6 girls and 1 boy who came after 6 girls. But I remember growing up and hearing stories from my mother about my childhood. I don't remember much of that time of my life because I was born premature and very weak and very sick. My mother used to say I spent most of my childhood in hospitals than at home. A lot of doctors and people didn't think that I would survive and live to this age where I am now, thanks be to God. So I suffered a lot physically, and when I contemplate what the Lord has done in and through my life, I just turned 47. So when I think how much the Lord has done in those 47 years, from a place where a lot of people thought that even physically I won't survive and I won't live that long, and to where I am today. So from, suffering physically, from being premature, born with a lot of physical limitations as a child, and some of those things, continue to be part of my journey. Even physically, I'm the smallest person in my family. Even my younger siblings are all taller than me. And then years later, my journey brought me here to United States, and that was another new station of the cross in my life, especially being in United States during the war between Iraq and United States in 2003. It was very hard. I felt I was between my 2 families, my 2 countries, my 2 nations or peoples. I loved my Iraqi people, and I love my American family where I live now and belong to. They were very, very hard years. The first few months after March 2003, they were very, very difficult months for me to sit down and watch the news and see what was going on in Iraq, and then choosing to go back to Iraq in 2003 and to see how our American troops were viewed by Iraqi people. They were very, very hard months for me to be there as well. So I suffered a lot also, just finding a way to define where I belong and what is the sense of family and country and nation and people means to me. I always tell people that I'm Assyrian by blood. I belong to all God's people in service. I'm proud to be part of Iraqi people where I was born and nourished and raised, and I am proud to be American today, to be part of the family where the Lord has called me to serve Him in a different way, in a new way than what I did when I was in Iraq. By faith, I belong to Jesus Christ, who came to dwell among us because I feel that is really from the beginning what he inspired my heart to be and to do, to be one with people, one with those who are suffering, one with those who were desperately in need for help. And that theme continues to grow within me, and that leads me to where I am today, in this new community in the Archdiocese of Boston, Daughters of Mary of Nazareth. Even though I started another community in Iraq in 1995 for the Assyrian Church, where I belong to since my birth and the sacrament that I received. But when I became in full communion with the Roman Catholic Church in 2005, I had to leave that community and resign from my responsibilities, because the Assyrian Church is not in union with Rome, and I was no longer able to keep my vows to the Assyrian bishop where I first started as a religious sister. I'm very grateful to His Eminence Cardinal Sean O'Malley, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Boston, for receiving me into the Roman Catholic Church here in Boston in 2005, and then receiving my private vows when I was in the time of transition and seeking God's grace to show me what is next for me and where He wants me to be. After years of discernment, it became clear for Cardinal Sean and I, who separately we had a desire to live the life of Nazareth and to bring the life of Nazareth among the people of Boston and the people of the Archdiocese of Boston. And we both received confirmation for our discernment around the same time, and we made the decision together in spring of 2011 to begin a foundation of a new community in the Archdiocese of Boston called Daughters of Mary of Nazareth. Very often people ask me, why a new community and why this name and why particularly in Boston and in United States. I think especially when people hear my background, where I came from and how much suffering was and still is in Middle East, that region that is torn by so much pain and violence and persecution and abuse and hatred. Definitely there is no doubt there is still much darkness there that needs to be cast out by the light of Christ and light of mercy, light of forgiveness, light of healing. Yet I do believe in my heart that I am here by divine providence and by His grace. There is a different kind of suffering here in the United States. There is a different kind of poverty here in the United States. There is a different kind of darkness here in the United States that also is desperately in need of the light of Christ. The attack that we have on human life and religious freedom and human dignity and the family life and the vocation of marriage, the sanctity of marriage. We have a lot of work to do here as well, and our country and our nation here is also in need of the light of Christ, and in need of men and women to dedicate their lives for the service of building the kingdom of Christ in a land where it was from its foundation a land under one God and was founded under the name of God. So it's very important for us to remain faithful to the roots of our fathers, the foundation of this nation and this country. And that is why we need a lot of men and women of faith really to remain faithful to the foundation of our nation and our country, and to continue to be instrument of God's light in today's world, each one of us, wherever we live. I remember Mother Teresa always used to say, charity begins at home, peace begins at home. And very often our people and our nation is just so eager to help other nations and other countries, and that is so admirable thing about American people and about our American nation. Yet we have also to pay attention to what's happening in our own country and try to help our own people to bring that light of Christ, that healing, that respect for the dignity of life and the dignity of family life, and dignity and sanctity of each soul from the moment of conception to the natural death. So I felt there was so much in need of not just a new community. Very often I also tell my daughters, the church and the world doesn't need just a new order or just many religious sisters or brothers or priests, but we need really people who are faithful to the gospel and faithful to the magisterium, and people who are joyful and passionate about their vocation and their calling. We have to be passionate about the light of Christ that came to redeem us and to save us and forgive us and heal us. It's really so overwhelming when we pause and think that God chose to come to our world to be one with us, to allow us to call God the mighty Father, to call him our Father. Isn't that amazing that God visited his people? One of the many beautiful prayers during Advent season, when we talk about God came to dwell among his people, God visited his people. The incarnation, it's a beautiful, beautiful miracle for us to contemplate, that God wanted to be one with us. And we are in need of religious men and women, priests and seminarians, to really communicate and live and incarnate this miracle of God wants to be one with his people, that his people might be one with him. So we need joyful vocations. We need holy and faithful vocations. Sometimes also people ask me, what is the difference between our community and other communities? I say, please God, hopefully not much. Because the truth is, if we all are called to live the gospel and proclaim the gospel, we shouldn't really be very different from each other in the foundation of our calling. If we all are called to proclaim the same gospel, the same love and mercy and healing grace of Jesus Christ, who came to dwell among his people. Yet this mission of the gospel can be communicated in so many different ways, and that is where we can be different, one community from another, by the way we communicate this message, each one of us through our own charism and spirituality. And for us as daughters of Mary of Nazareth, we are called to be a Nazarene community. And what I mean by Nazarene community, to really contemplate and then live out what we contemplate about Jesus' life in Nazareth and Mary and Joseph's life in Nazareth. Very often liturgically and also in the scripture we see it very clearly that there is so much emphasis on Bethlehem, and rightly so, because that is where all it began. The incarnation, the birth of our Savior, God became human. And there is so much emphasis later on Jerusalem, where the crucifixion happened. So we were saved by his birth and redeemed by his crucifixion, because he shed his blood for our redemption. So there is a lot of emphasis on Bethlehem, where the salvation began, and then a lot of emphasis on Jerusalem, where the fulfillment of redemption, it was manifested on the cross when Jesus shed his blood from the cross to redeem us and to save us. Yet we forget that in between of the moment of the incarnation to his crucifixion, they were about 30 years of his earthly life where Jesus lived hidden, ordinary life, present among his people. So that is why we chose to really enter deeper into those 30 years, into that mystery of Jesus' earthly life in Nazareth, between his birth in Bethlehem and then his crucifixion in Jerusalem. When we think about it, those 30 years, they might be maybe for some people very ordinary hidden years, but yet they are extraordinary, because when you think about it, God, Son of God, chose to become hidden and human and live ordinary life for 30 years for you and I, to set that example for us, to be present. And that is what is beautiful about the ministry of Nazareth. It focuses so much on the ministry of presence, to be present to people, to be present among God's people. The reason that this one is so important, this aspect of our charism is so important, in today's world, and here particularly in a Western culture and in the United States in particular, because we live in a time everyone is so busy, everyone in a hurry. Sometimes you see even family members sitting in the dining room to have a meal. You have each person is busy text messaging or checking things online on their iPhone or iPad, or reading a book, or just being so distracted. There is not much present, even within a family, within the same household. And that is why we are so much in need to make emphasis on that ministry of present, to be present to one another. If you take the train or in the airport and in the plane, very rare you find people having eye contact with one another, as if it's strange if you look at somebody and smile and greet them, because everyone is just so zoomed in their own little world. They all have plugged themselves into this little electronic world. Either they are on Facebook or tweeting or online or listening to music, and the headphone is plugged into their ears. Like there isn't really much human interaction anymore. Everything has become about social media, and we interact with each other through machines and those short statements that people place on Facebook or sometimes have chat online. But there isn't much, again, human interaction and being present to one another. When I was in campus ministry for a number of years at Boston University, I remember whenever I called some of the students to ask them about something related to ministry, they used to say, "Hey, what's up?" So I used to say, "Can we just say first, good morning or good afternoon or how are you?" They used to joke and say, "Oh, Mother Olga leaves the longest messages ever," because I used to, say whenever I called to leave a message, "Hi, Jane, this is Mother Olga. I hope you are doing well. I just wanted to call to check on you, and I have a question to ask you. Please call me when you get a chance. I love you. God bless you. I look forward to hearing from you." And they used to say, "Oh, Mother leaves like 10 seconds message. That is really very long." And that is a sad reality, that we no longer we have even moved further from voice messaging, because now everything is text messaging. So we miss that human element, even just having that voice communication. So it's so much needed in today's world, the ministry of Nazareth, the life of Nazareth, to be present among people, to be present to one another. I think people are shocked when they hear that we don't watch a TV, we don't have a cell phone, we don't use computer each day, we have limited time for emails or other means of communication, because we try for the most part to be present in the community and to be always with people that we serve. Another beautiful element about Nazareth, when you think about it, that for 30 years Mary and Joseph lived under same roof with Jesus Christ. Isn't that awesome? As if their whole life was, for 30 years they had perpetual adoration, basically. When you are under same roof with the Son of God, physically in his presence, day in and day out, it's like a daily adoration, 24/7, for 30 years of his earthly life that he spent in that house of Nazareth. So that's why contemplation and adoration is very important aspect also of our life as a Nazarene community. So we are a contemplative and apostolic order. We are founded in the Archdiocese of Boston under the leadership of guidance of our Archbishop, His Eminence Cardinal Sean O'Malley. We focus a lot on the emphasis of contemplation and daily adoration every morning and every evening. And because we are a Marian community, we have a lot of Marian devotions, especially our daily rosary and the total consecration to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And another way that we live out our ministry of presence is through corporate works of mercy. We visit shelters, women's shelters, prisons, men and women's prisons, and nursing homes or hospitals. We also run a lot of activities here in our own little Nazareth, especially really for the mission of hospitality, and again to allow people to experience the life of Nazareth by coming here for rest and physical and spiritual refreshment, because we always think, which is still the same today, the culture in Middle East, not very often people need appointment to come and visit each other. Neighbors can visit each other anytime, and we always wonder, how much even was more of that during Jesus' life here on earth. I'm sure there were a lot of people in the neighborhood. They visited the house of Nazareth where Mary and Joseph lived with Jesus anytime, really, to rest, to talk, to pray, to have somebody to listen to them. So that's a very important aspect also of our life in our apostolic work. And because we are founded here in United States, and particularly in the Archdiocese of Boston, we all know that in recent years, the church in general suffered a lot because of the abuse that happened, the clergy abuse that happened toward children, and that hurt the church so deeply. That wound will always be in the heart of the Mother Church. And that is why we needed a new life, a new light, a new spirit that brings that motherly face of the church back to people. Very often I tell my daughters, we need to be out to live that ministry of presence out everywhere we go, because we live in a time, unfortunately, people out of pain and out of anger have left the church, and it's time for us to be that church for them out wherever we go, even if it's in a grocery store or a post office or in the train station. But they have to see that the Mother Church is still alive, and the heart of the church is still there for them, just like a heart of a real mother. So we needed this kind of new spirit, a new way of communicating the motherly heart of the church to people by being that presence everywhere we go, because the church is desperately in need of that. The other aspect of our ministry, because again we live in a time, not only the faithful have been wounded and hurt, and some of them unfortunately have walked away from the church and left the church, but also we have a lot of many faithful holy priests have been hurt also because of what happened. So they need our support, they need our care and appreciation. So going back to the same message when I mentioned way earlier, over 30 years ago, when I first felt the call in my heart to console the heart of Jesus, I felt even more now in these recent years being here in Boston after the scandal, and how much that hurt many faithful holy priests. I feel Jesus, the high priest, from the cross, or in his lowliness and that abandonment that he felt in the Garden of Gethsemane, how much he needs our consolation. In so many ways, I felt many priests who were judged because of the scandal, not because they had to do anything with it, but just by the nature of their vocation, because a lot of priests who were accused, that caused every priest to be looked at in a wrong way. So I feel a lot of priests, faithful holy priests who had nothing to do with the abuse scandal, they were so wounded and hurt, and almost like I felt they were like Jesus, abandoned in the Garden of Gethsemane. So being Marian community, daughters of Mary, I felt we have to imitate our mother and to be there at the foot of the cross that our church today in America has been carrying since almost a decade now, after the scandal that happened here in United States and elsewhere. So as daughters of Mary, we try to stand behind of our faithful and holy priests. We pray for them, we send them words of encouragement and support, but we also have every Thursday night adoration and special prayer for priests, and then every first Friday of the month we have all night adoration for priests. All the sisters rotate overnight to remain in the chapel, to remain at the foot of Jesus in the monastery, in the Blessed Sacrament, to console the heart of the sorrowful Good Shepherd and High Priest, and also the sorrowful hearts of many priests have been hurt because of the scandal. So I feel in some ways, yes, we are a new community and a small community, but I feel because of where we have been founded, here in the heart of Boston, in the Archdiocese of Boston, here in the United States, there is a lot of work ahead of us. The harvest is abundant, and that's why we need a lot of prayers and we need a lot of labors to really continue to rebuild His kingdom here in the heart of our country and for the people of our nation. Thanks be to God, it's just so amazing and so inspiring to see many young women have responded to this challenge of becoming daughters of Mary, to stand at the foot of the cross in the heart of the Mother Church, to support and to heal the faithful who have left the Church, and those who are still within the Church, yet at times confused and feel so thirst and hunger for nourishment and spiritual resources, and also for our shepherds and our priests and our bishops. We feel that we have, a lot of work to do, and that's why I'm just so grateful to God for all the so many young women have responded to this call and have offered generously their lives to serve in and through this community the needs of our people and the needs of our diocese. Even though the age of our community, it's only now 2 years and few months really, because we started officially on the Feast of Juan Diego, December 9, 2011, and we are now in January 2014. We already, thanks be to God, have 3 novices, 2 aspirants preparing for their postulancy, and then we have 4 young women entering at the end of spring and early summer, and we have 9 candidates since early fall. They have come to discern with our community. So it's really so inspiring, and I do take it as a sign of affirmation that the Lord is affirming our calling here in this diocese through the mission and the charism of Blessed Charles de Foucauld, to live the life of Nazareth and to live the mission and the ministry of presence among God's people in a time that everyone is so distracted and everyone is always in a hurry. So it's just so beautiful to have that peaceful presence, the presence of love and gentleness and listening heart and loving heart, to bring really that gospel back to the heart of people. Very often people ask me about our rules of life. I always say I don't like to call them rules of life. I prefer to call them the way of life. Our way of life is really very simple. We just want to live the gospel, and we want to live the beatitude, and we want for the Lord to bless us with that grace to enter deeper every day into the school of Nazareth, to be at the foot of Mary and Joseph, and to learn from them how to be in daily adoration before the presence of Jesus, not only just in the Blessed Sacrament, but in the people that we meet everywhere through our daily ministry and daily life. So we would like to ask for your prayers and support and generosity. And please, if you know of any woman who might be interested to serve the Lord and to serve the church here in America, and to really bring that light of gospel into the heart of darkness that our nation and our country have experienced in recent years, please feel free to share with them the great news that the life of Nazareth and the school of Nazareth has to offer to today's people and in today's world that we live in. And may God bless you in all your needs, and be assured of our daily prayers for you and your loved ones. God bless.
I can't begin to know it, but then I know it's growing strong. Was it in Mass or in sweet adoration? You whispered, dear, just come along. Love pouring forth from His heart, touching me, touching you. Sweet Jesus Christ, your love never felt so true, so true, so true, so true. I feel inclined to say yes, to give my moves me with compassion to carry your presence in all I do. And when I fall, your mercy swift to raise